So we now come to the Asia Unplugged session, where we have where we lined up 4 specialists to talk about their area of expertise in 10 minutes each. First up, she started her career as a digital marketer with WeGo, and then went on to become co-founder of one of Southeast Asia's most successful startups in tours and activities. Please welcome Blanca Menchaca, co-founder and COO, BeMyGuest.
The name is Yoshime.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today representing Asia. Asia, right? 4.5 billion people. That's 60% of the entire world population. So very happy that we get a voice today at Phocuswright Europe. I'm here to tell you a little bit about what we do in tours and activities in Asia. I come from a company called BeMyGuest. We were founded in 2012. We have HQ in Singapore, so proudly Singaporean company, with 2 offices in China, 1 in Malaysia, 1 in Philippines, and teams on the ground in most Southeast Asian countries. Our business model is fairly simple. We develop a bunch of technology for supply aggregation, the usual bells and whistles in the industry: content management system, revenue management system, inventory system, and e-ticketing solutions if the suppliers require so. We work with about 4,000 suppliers all over Southeast Asia, North Asia, ranging from attractions, day tours, activities, local events, unique experiences. Once we digitalize them, we localize them into multiple Asian languages, and then we're able to connect them to the biggest online travel players in the region. We are predominantly a B2B player. Our partners, and most of our volume comes from China, Korea, Indonesia, India, Vietnam. Some of our most prominent partners include Ctrip from China, who was just recently announced us as their best strategic partner for their internationalization of tours and activities. We work with companies like Yatra in India, who is top 3 OTA in that market, and others like Traveloka in Indonesia, who are also top 3, if not top 1 by now, and hundreds of other more in Asia. So, tours and activities in Asia. I think most of you know now that the tours and activities global market is sized to be around $130 billion worth. But what not most of us know is that about 30% of that is happening in Asia. That's $40 billion just in tours and activities. Unfortunately, though, 99% is being transacted still offline, over the ticket counter or maybe at the travel agent. However, in Asia, we also see the highest growth of online travel bookings, with double digits, averaging 20–25% annually, which makes it a lot more highest growth than Europe and US. So it sounds like a really big and exciting opportunity, right? In fact, it is. But it's full of challenges as well. First one, languages. Second, language is not generally English. And remember, we're not dealing with language barriers just from the consumer side. We're also dealing with language barriers from the supply side, because we deal with small, medium-sized businesses. So having a local team in each of the countries makes a big difference when you deal with them. On top of that, currencies. At the moment, my company is paying in about 16 different currencies, including Vietnamese dong, Korean won, Thai baht, Indonesian ringgit, Malaysian rupee. Sorry, the other way around. And then we have a lot of capital controls from governments, making it extremely difficult for us to open bank accounts in those currencies. And when we are allowed to do so, we generally have to register an entity. We register the entity, and then the government expects you to generate revenue, and then it makes it very hard for you to take that capital out and bring it back to your HQ, where you really want to have your net revenue. We face the same issues that Europe and US does. We're still trying to bridge the gap between supply and OTAs. OTAs are accustomed to dealing with hotels and flights. For decades, you've been using APIs, dynamic rates, fully cancelable situations. You're used to instant confirmation, and you expect the same service level from suppliers of tours and activities. However, suppliers of tours and activities are really behind in terms of technology. If you go to the biggest attractions, you talk about API with the commercial teams, and the commercial teams nod and they say, yes, sure, we can connect by API. Then they contact you with their tech team, who ends up being the network computer guy who's looking at you going like, what do you mean API? So that's still happening. There's a lot of catching up from the supply side. And there's probably hundreds of startups booming, not just in Europe, US, but also in Asia, trying to come up with technological solutions to actually get the gap to close. These are some of the statistics that we've seen over the past year in terms of the consumer side. We are first-time travelers in Asia, so that means we are still collecting destinations, not so much experiences yet. There's a ton of new low-cost carriers that take us around new destinations at a very low cost, but that means that I still want to go around, do the top 10 things to do, visit the most interesting points of interest, take a selfie, put it on Instagram, show off with my friends, and then move on to the next destination. So attractions, top things to do are still the best sellers. However, we do see the trend starting to change in markets like South Korea, where the traveler is a little bit more sophisticated and starts to consume the local experience and unique activities. Advanced booking is actually quite acceptable in Asia. We see the same behavior across India, Indonesia, South Korea, Vietnam, even China. A little bit different in Hong Kong and Singapore when in-destination bookings are a bit higher, but that's probably a factor of the players that we partner with in those markets. And why is this so? First and foremost, of course, language. Then I want to do payments in my local payment mode. So if I'm paying in China, I want to do WeChat. If I'm paying in Indonesia, I probably even want to pay cash. But on top of that, Asians, we get very less holiday days. On average, only 10. So imagine, Europeans, you get, I think, 30 or above. We only get 10, so when we go there, we really just want to enjoy. We don't want to follow a flag anymore, but we also don't want to spend the entire morning looking for a Vietnamese tour guide if my language is Vietnamese. Instant confirmation in terms of fulfillment from the supply side is still coming up. We see about 38% of the attractions are able now to fulfill instantly, but however, it's not really coming from the attractions themselves. We are enabling them with free technology. They don't want to pay for technology. And finally, mobile. Mobile only. Handy Travel is one of our best partners in the hotel space. What they do is they give you a device, handset, which means you don't have to carry your private phone, meaning you don't really need to feel guilty because you're not looking at your emails. So you can put it away, take the handset. It's enabled with Wi-Fi and a lot of content, beautiful editorial content with city guides, and then BeMyGuest feed, tours and activities. What do you want to book? That's actually one of the best case studies we've seen for hotels. And then we have a very successful partner in Indonesia, Traveloka. As most of us might know now, Indonesia jumped generations, the generation of laptop at desktop and desktop straight into mobile. And if you ask some millennials these days, have you ever used internet? They'll tell you no. But if you ask them, have you used Facebook or Instagram? They say, of course we have. That's because they bought a mobile which the apps were preloaded on. And finally, entry and payments. We don't want to use cash. We just want to show you on Waiver on my WeChat payment. So if I don't even want to use paper cash, I don't want to print my entry ticket. So WeChat has really set the standard in payments. And for tours and activities, that means, only barcode, QR code, let me in, skip the line. That's all I have for you today. Thank you.
Our next speaker is responsible for building GetYourGuide's growth and presence in China. And prior to this, she was the co-founder of shuyuyu.com, an online tours and activities booking platform for Chinese tourists traveling to Europe. Please welcome Alex Shen, Strategic Partnership Manager, China for GetYourGuide.
I am the Partnership Manager at GetYourGuide. We're the leading online marketplace for tours and activity. Every year, we help millions of travelers turning their trips into amazing experiences. So part of my job at GetYourGuide, like Yoon said, is to develop our Chinese market. Like many of us here, we think it's a market of enormous potential. And I'm here today to share with you 4 things you need to know about mobile in China. And I hope that gives you some insight to navigate the Chinese market. Number 1, China is leading the way of mobile commerce. So Chinese people live their life through their phones. If you think people here are addicted to their phones, wait until you visit Beijing or Shanghai. It will be a culture shock. So it's not surprising that almost half of the e-commerce are now made via mobile devices. And in comparison to the US, it's only about a quarter. So this is made available because of the cheaper mobile network and high smartphone penetrations. In a survey conducted by KPMG, it shows that 9 out of 10 Chinese correspondents had purchased something on their mobile in the last 12 months. This is a nation that is so used to buying online, and they're really, really comfortable in doing so on their mobile devices. Last year, on November the 11th, known as the Single Day Sales in China, a festival completely invented for shopping. So great invention there. So Alibaba bagged over 17.8 billion GMV transaction all in one day, 17.8 billion. And 82% of those are done on mobile devices. So that is a staggering split between PC and mobile. So for any one of you who wants to enter the Chinese market, I cannot stress more the importance of mobile as a channel. Number 2, WeChat. It's been mentioned a lot here, but we cannot talk about the mobile landscape in China without mentioning about WeChat. So it started off like a messaging app, but it allows you to do a million things more. So here's a screenshot of my personal WeChat. Each of these boxes represent a functionality, so including transferring money to your friends, booking hotel and flights, ordering takeaways, donating to charity, paying utility bills, review your restaurants, ordering a taxi, a million things, even ordering a hairdresser to your home to cut your hair. So WeChat is really a super app, allows you to do everything. So it's no wonder that 800 million users are using WeChat, and that is 2/3 of the Chinese nation. But it's not just loved by the users, it's loved by the commercial brands too. Think about, in one place, you can do your customer engagement, your sales, your payment, your advertising, your social media, your customer survey, everything just in one place. So at the moment, there are already 2 million company official accounts. And these are not just domestic brands, including Burberry, Chanel, Intercontinental Hotel Group, or British Airways. So it's a really powerful tool for anyone who wants to engage and reach out to the Chinese consumers. Number 3, the domination of BAT. So you probably know about this already. BAT is the collective term of Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. Chinese internet world is dominated by these 3 players. So what does that mean in mobile landscape? 16 out of the 20 top downloaded apps in March this year are under BAT. So let's just give you a little bit background more on the BAT. Alibaba handles more transactions than eBay and Amazon combined. Tencent, who owns WeChat, now is one of the most valuable public firms in the world. And Baidu, although its position is being challenged right now by another domestic player, but it still is the leading search giant in China, owns about 17% of the market share. Now, these players, their ambitions are not just confined in the few areas they started off with. They're trying to expand in every pillar of our users' life. One of the ways they do so is by acquiring the winners of the startup world. That is why that you see 16 out of the top 20 download apps are under BAT. So if you think about BAT, think about how you can leverage their customer reach. Ride the wave instead of going against it. Number 4, mobile payment. Again, it's been mentioned and mentioned again. China is years ahead on mobile payments. So one of the most common scenes now you see in China is that people reach out for their phones instead of wallet when they are buying something. And this is not quite well adopted here in Europe. Just think about how many times you have paid with your mobile yesterday. 0, 1. But in China, this is super common. And now look at the data. This is the mobile payment in China versus US. It's 50 times more. Now, it is a shocking figure at first sight, but if you think about the mobile landscape I just described, it's not so hard to understand. People buy online, they pay with their mobile devices. But it's not just for online purchases. Last year, I was walking down on the street of China, and there was a street vendor selling cherries. I didn't have any cash, so I befriended her on WeChat and transferred money that way. And she is still my WeChat friend. So this is all very, very common things that's happening in mobile transactions in China. And what does this mean for anyone who want to attract the Chinese consumer? So this is a 7-Eleven, a convenience store in Thailand. So on top of the shop, you see a Alipay logo. That means popular destination frequented by the Chinese, adopting to the way that Chinese are used to pay domestically, offline. So if you want to earn the money of the Chinese, you might as well make the way they give it to you extremely easy. So lastly, I want to leave you with this figure. Like Fritz said, there are many, many rich Chinese people out there. But last year, in 2016, there are 122 million travelers traveled outside China. Many of them are first-time travelers. And if you want to attract what this 120 million people represent and the market they represent, think mobile. My name is Alex, so if you're interested more about mobile space, China, tourism activity, come say hi afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is a pioneer in e-commerce in Japan, selling his first shopping startup to Yahoo. He's also a pioneer in travel meta search in Japan. Please welcome Kei Shibata, co-founder and CEO, Venture Republic.
From time to time, we can talk about the weather. Is the weather fine? And I say break.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kei Shibata. So I co-founded this company, Venture Republic, 16 years ago in Japan. So we are now currently running Travel.jp, which is the supposed to be the leading meta search in Japan, as long as the a couple other travel brands across the Asia. So for the next 10 minutes, I want to talk about the meta, the hot space, and then meta in Asia. It could be even hotter. So I always actually describe meta as sort of a hipster in travel. So we, of course, hate to wear our suits and tie, and we like to stay sort of edgy, different. And then after a decade since the first meta was born in the world, I think this is actually the current global landscape of meta search. So yesterday, I actually put this data together by aggregating, the numbers from Shibata. So you see the metas are everywhere in the world. Literally, like every single country almost, you can actually see the meta searches. So Asia is definitely not an exception. Today, so we see more than a dozen of the meta searches actually spreading across the Asia. If I talk about the two big countries in Asia, China and Japan, by the way, so that 122 million of the Chinese outbound travelers, that's about the same size with Japanese population. So the China is always keep reminding us like a huge, huge countries in terms of travel. And then Japan is actually is still almost like a half the size of the size of a market of China. So if I take a look at the Japanese market, you can clearly see the two large meta searches, including TripAdvisors and then our website, travel.jp, are among the top 5 most visited websites in Japan. So the clearly meta search is actually eating a lot of market shares in the OTA space. In China, we touch upon a tuna more than a couple times today. I think it's the tuna was actually saying that we are overtaking Ctrip as China's biggest travel websites back in 2013. So how the meta search actually works as a great business model in everywhere in Asia. So how are we actually competing each other in each market and each region? I like to describe this way. So the local kings versus like global giants. And then typically, how we actually play the game is, so the local players actually tended to stay in the local market, and then to cover many different product categories, not only hotels and flights, but also packages, tours and activities, sometimes rail, sometimes bus. And at the same time, the global players tended to stay in a one product category, such as hotels or flights, but try to expand geographically. I want to talk a little bit about money. So apparently, hipsters started making money. So the first things we actually heard is back in 2011, when my friend Fritz was actually still running a tuna. I think tuna actually got bought by Baidu, which is the giant search company in China. And then after all those years, tuna actually made an IPO in Chinese the Nasdaq, and then they ended up is actually being delisted from Nasdaq earlier this year. And what happened is essentially the Ctrip is actually effectively owning a tuna through the private equity deal. And this is a price tag. It was a value over $4 billion. It's a big shopping. So elsewhere in Japan, so our company, Venture Republics, also made an IPO back in 2008. And then 3 years later, we ended up is actually getting into the LVO deal, fully leveraged by the Japan's leading banks, Bank of Tokyo, Mitsubishi. And then we ended up as privatizing a company in 2012. So, all thing happens, this is the current map of the Asia meta search. Clearly, Ctrip is leading away in the whole consolidation game. However, we still see more than a handful number of the independent and the local strong contenders who are maintaining the market shares in every single countries in Asia market. We definitely smell the money, and we see what's going to happen in the next year or two. So hipsters matters actually everywhere in the world now. And if you actually see a lot of hipsters in every corner of the town, they're not hipster anymore. They're becoming a mainstream, right? So the hipster has to be staying edgy, has to be different, has to differentiate. So Asia is pretty good at it. So first on the mobile, this is what what we keep hearing this morning. So the mobile booking, definitely Japan, China, those countries are actually leading the way. And if I talk about more details and more data about the mobile, this is the one example of the mobile significance in the Asian countries, South Korea. So our portfolio meta search company called Ostay, so they are seeing almost 80% of traffic is coming from their app. So Japan is the same thing. So we're seeing more than 70% of traffic is coming from mobile. But interestingly, in the case of Japan, so we see most of the traffic is coming from mobile browsers, not the app. So this is actually the interesting data we just recently got. So in a country like Japan, where the mobile infrastructure is great, so you don't complain much about your 3G or 4G connections, coverage-wise, speed-wise, and then you ended up seeing the people actually are not using apps so much, but instead they are using mobile browsers. Talk about final revolutions. So this is the best example. Tuna as was pronouncing themselves as not the meta, but the OTA back in 2015. It's a very early stage of the game of the final revolutions for the meta search, with all the affiliate booking and instant booking. Almost no one actually was talking about that, but the Tuna was already saying that, so we are getting into the booking funnel. Clearly, mobile instant booking is becoming very, very obvious in the South Korea. And then in a country like Japan, we, as a Travel.jp, is taking a little bit differently. Since 7 years ago, so we decided actually getting into the content space by generating a lot of a travel destination article, and then to allow us to reach the users not only on the funnel on the booking, but also across the different funnels in a customer's journey. Speaking of Google, so I think Fritz touched upon that the Google is not everything in Asia, which is true. But at the same time, so I think we started seeing the Google in their final revolution moves. This is the Japanese, the Google's travel products. It started doing well. However, country like China, the Baidu is clearly there, and then they're actually running the meta search services. And a country like South Korea, where the neighbor is actually the dominant search players, they are also providing a meta search services. In Japan, Yahoo Japan, it is still maintaining almost half the size of the search shares, splitting with the Google. They are also in the meta search space. Lastly, I want to talk about the product categories. So, as I mentioned, a lot of Asian local players actually getting into different spaces other than flights and hotels. So, after 16 years, we are still seeing packages as the biggest segment in our business. So this is one of the examples of what Asian meta is all about. And in South Korea, our portfolio company, again, Ostay, is aggregating all the data of every single accommodations, not just the hotels and the private accommodation, but this is what they call lab hotels. So the motel for the couples, for a couple hours stay. And then so they basically everything, and they aggregate everything and to let the users actually search on everything. This is it for my presentations. And then if you want to hear more about the Asian market, particularly Japan, China, South Korea, so we're going to have a great conference on June 8 and 9 in Tokyo. And I would like to see you guys all there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Kay. Our next speaker in this session on Asia Unplugged, he's a travel pioneer in South Korea. among the first to see the opportunities in online travel and establishing TideSquare as one of the country's leading local OTAs. Please welcome Yoon, CEO, TideSquare.
Hello, nice to meet you. So as Si-Hoon said, my name is Yoon, and my company's TideSquare is one of top 3 OTAs in South Korea. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Korean market for 10 minutes. It could be a brief introduction. So as background image here, last year, Incheon Airport, South Korea, it's, yes, very, very crowded. So we can see during last a couple of years, we break the new record of number of travelers in Korea. From year 2014, year 2015, grew 21%. And year 2015 was actually kind of a historical moment that number of Korean outbound travelers exceeding number of Japanese outbound travelers. Year 2016, still steady, exceeding more than 20 million outbound travelers. I'm always hate to make a presentation after the Alex because number of China is huge, bigger than this, but still it's quite a big number. And also, inbound travel, year 2016, we break new records as well. But maybe some of you already know about the Korean situation. The politics sometimes impacts on Korean markets. So this is the candlelight demonstration end of last year in South Korea. So millions of Korean people hold the candles gathering at the square against our former ex-president's corruptions. It took for a month. And of course, we have very friendly neighborhoods. So threat from North Korea. And also there was a rumor that Chinese government was quite upset while Korean government decided to deploy the US missile defense systems in South Korea. So there was a rumor that Chinese government banned to send travel agents to sell Korean products. So I'm not sure it is true or not, but anyway, the number says this March, the inbound travelers has been decreased minus 11%, and Chinese inbound travelers decreased like more than 40%. But still, Koreans go outside, 23.8%, which is an increasing number compared to last year, this March. So maybe we Koreans accept those political situations as a part of our life. So 2 weeks ago, we have a new president, and we all hope that he can solve these problems. And maybe this morning I read on newspaper that our new president sent ambassador to China, and maybe we can release some conflicts. Anyway, okay, so no more politics. So Korean outbound travelers increasing is hugely impacted by low-cost carriers. So low-cost carriers, I mean international passenger, their international passenger carry is increasing 60% last year compared to full-service carriers, 12%. And also its market share international from 15% to 20% last year. Of course, domestic market already dominated by LCCs, more than 50%. And we have 6 local low-cost carriers in South Korea, and 6 more is waiting for government authorization or preparation. So as you remember the first image, our airport is already very crowded. So here's some good news. End of this year, and left-hand side of the image, we will have a new Incheon Airport Terminal 2, so which increase our passenger capacity from 54 million to 72 million. So probably we can hold all of those new SCCs. And right-hand side, yes, we will have Winter Games year 2018 in Pyeongchang, which is east side of Korea. Be careful, it's not Pyongyang. So I'm going to talk about the air ticket sales in Korea. So BSP sales is kind of the only official statistics in South Korea. So, and the scenery here is a little bit different from others. So usually we think that OTA is growing very fast. Local traditional tour operators, they are big but steady still. But if you see the orange numbers, number 1, Hana Tour, number 2, Modu Tour, really traditional tour operators in South Korea, and their ticket sales is increasing more than 50% in this first quarter, including the number 4, YB Tour, which is also traditional local players. So in the country, the gray area, the number 3, Interpark is one of top Korean OTAs, online tour as well. So except for TideSquare, my company, which is the fastest growing company in South Korea, those OTAs, I can say it's traditional OTAs, suffer some slowdown. So mainly is because of our new entrance. Probably, as Kay said, year 2015, it was the first year of meta search in South Korea. So Naver, Skyscanner is coming, Kayak is coming, and Naver, which is a kind of local Google or Baidu in Korea, Naver start their meta search services in Korea. And also on the right-hand side, we have a big open markets, local open markets like Timon, Kupang, 11th Street, G Market. They are coming in this travel site last year. Due to their severe competition in e-commerce side, probably they need some new area to compete, and they all just rushing into this market. So traditional agencies allied with those new players and pump up their sales. So I can say it's a kind of traditional agency strikes back. And strangely, so far, there were no global OTAs in air ticket sales side, but just 2 weeks ago, Expedia starts to sell its BSP air tickets in Korea, so we all watching about it. Hotels, as usual, global players dominate the market. But local startups, smartly, they found new market segment. As Kay said, the presentation before, they found some budget hotel segments. So he said, motel, someone says it's love hotel or pensions or guest houses. Actually, in total, the market size of this is 3 times bigger than hotel markets. And also, mobile usage is a different story. All of those local startups doing pretty good at mobile side. So this is a monthly active user of this February. So local startups made on the top. Yes, Korea is country of mobile and IT. No wonder it's a country of Samsung and LG. So Korean customers quite used to with using on mobile. So more than 50% of Korean consumers search mostly on mobile when they shopping. And 31% using mobile payments weekly basis, as Alex said. So Korea is right after, in terms of mobile usage, right after China. But online travel penetration is weirdly is still low. So year 2017, Korean online penetration, we believe it's around 30%, which is compared to Asia Pacific, still quite low, far below. And also mobile booking is still less than 50%. Of course, it's vary by all the players, like all startups. They recorded more than 80% of mobile payment, but the traditionals, 20 or 30%, something like that. So wrap up. So travel is really good, especially in outbound travel industry, and still many OTAs and new entrants are competing in air sales market. And global OTAs dominate hotel side, and local startups dominate budget hotel side. So it's growing, very fragmented big market, and online and mobile penetration is still quite low. So I can say opportunity is here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Min.